You're probably noticing this online too. Something strange is happening in terms of how people grow, and it's not always the people that it kind of like adds up or makes the most sense. When I say this, I mean that a lot of times we think if creators or brand founders are putting in the effort and the work and the strategy required, growth is inevitable. But what happens when we see experts grow online when they're not necessarily doing things by the book? They're not doing things in the traditional sense that we know it. And at first it feels confusing because it feels like the internet is rewarding expertise in a way that we probably have never seen before. So if you've ever felt like you know your industry so well, you're probably the best at what you do, you know everything that you need to help someone else, but someone with less credentials, less experience, less expertise seems to be growing at a faster rate than you, or seems to be accomplishing more than you on the internet. And it's because what is seen as an authority has just changed. So I do want to share with you kind of what the old model of expertise was and what the new model of expertise actually is, so that you know how to utilize it to your advantage for your brand and business. So when I think about the old version of the internet and content creation, and also what was available to us as consumers, as people on the internet, authority came from demonstrating knowledge. It came from credibility and proof. It came from giving value daily. And so what was really common was tutorials, step-by-step advice, just really educational overload, because information felt scarce. People on the internet were just seeing different things for the first time. And instead of someone just sharing their personal life as we knew it, people were now sharing almost like strategy and had a different thought in terms of how content is being made. And this was all available for free, accessible in your bedroom at any time to access, no matter what your level of expertise is or where you were. And so expertise used to mean being the best teacher for your audience. And again, people needed access to this knowledge, and that fulfilled that need. And so this is why it worked so well. Now, information is not scarce. Anyone can Google something, they can chat GPT something. There's all sorts of free information available online that people can literally start businesses, can start ventures, can start hobbies just by going on Google and searching how to do that. So literally you have access to methods and expertise that someone can take years to develop, frameworks just in clicks of a button. So teaching alone stopped differentiating these experts. It wasn't the only thing that mattered anymore if you're someone that wants to build authority. Because knowledge became more accessible, what started helping is actually having perspective, stories and experiences that only you have access to, that only you can provide for your audience. And as a result, people will be so much more bought into that because they know that they cannot get that anywhere else. The new type of expert online is a perspective leader. So it's not about how much they teach, it's about how they interpret reality. So for example, me, as I'm giving you this video on YouTube today, I can absolutely give you a step-by-step guide on how to create a carousel, but there's probably so many creators out there that are doing this exact same thing. Or I can give you a step-by-step guide on how to be a better authority using, these 3 ways, right? But there's so many people who are doing that same thing versus giving you my perspective based on the clients that I've helped, the work that I do, and how long I've been in this industry, to be able to share that knowledge and that experience with you with a perspective onto that, not just teaching. So when we think about what modern authority looks like, it could look like noticing patterns that people may not be paying attention to. It could look like actually making predictions and coming up with trends before they actually make it all over the media. It could look like just framing certain ideas and contextualizing all of the information that's happening and being like, hey, these are how I pieced all of these things together and why you should be working on this instead of that, how you could be doing this instead of this. People want to follow experts that don't just help them do things in a different way. People want to follow experts that help them see things in a different way. I think about someone like Mel Robbins, where she's not just teaching productivity tips and tricks. She literally names emotional experiences. She shared emotional parts of her story and how she essentially navigated those experiences. She translates those kind of psychology shifts into identity shifts that you can then do to improve your current life. And so people share those insights because they feel seen, they feel understood. It's not just information alone. I also think about Emma Chamberlain, who literally shifted from a YouTuber to essentially this cultural tastemaker without being any more educational. Emma didn't necessarily grow because she taught something. She literally just changed how creators communicated online. People just started being more open, more vulnerable, more like quirky or weird, or started doing things that were just very authentically them. She is literally the reason that so many people feel comfortable showing up in a casual content setting, showing up without necessarily overthinking all of the high production and done up value of things. She literally normalized that and then started refining her taste when it comes to perspective and also taste. So people started trusting her, being like, if you can show up on camera without makeup, if you can show up in this casual setting, if you can show up in this way that isn't unlike what anyone else is doing, I also want to do that in this way. I also want to be able to just show up and talk about these things. I also want to have like a casual type setting. She's doing interviews, she's getting deals, she has her own coffee brand, not because she's the top expert in that field, but because she's created something that people find value and want to feel seen in. I also think of the brand like Glossier, where they weren't necessarily trying to educate on the importance of skincare and health and like wearing less makeup. They literally just focused on wanting to create products for people who wanted to accentuate their natural beauty. And they weren't necessarily focused on super heavily educating about it. They were just focused on the story of, if you are someone at that time, especially, that doesn't want to do the classic 2016 makeup, heavy glam, etc., you can actually use our product. And look now that has kind of evolved into the ongoing trend. So many brands are actually utilizing this narrative for their own. And even though they aren't educating on it, they are still doubling down on this so that they can make their audience feel seen through all of these kind of little pockets of story and perspective that only they can share as founders. I also think about someone like Nara Smith. She is not the best cook. She is not a world-renowned high-end expertise, etc. Now, it might be a hobby. She might like doing it. She might be pretty good at it. But again, that's also not the reason why she grew. She is seen as an expert because it still ties back to her just like health conditions and her skin conditions when it comes to why she started using clean ingredients to begin with. She tied it to aesthetic storytelling. She tied it to lifestyle interpretation. So all of that is what makes her kind of this new modern version of what an expert is. So you as an expert might still feel stuck because you have something that you feel like you need to prove. You have to explain everything. You have to justify your expertise. You think you need to know more than anyone out there. You need to over deliver value, yet people without any of those things are passing you on. So the three types of experts that we commonly see today are going to be the information experts, which again follow the old model. They teach us how to do certain things. This is helpful, but it's easily replaceable if your audience doesn't have their teeth sunk into like who you are as a brand, your personal brand, your story, your experience, your perspective. Then we have insight experts, which is kind of like one step forward. This is where people start explaining why. And these are just trusted voices that we learn from in terms of why we should be doing X over Y, why we should be doing this versus that. Then we have perspective experts, and this is kind of like the new modern authority. These are the people that are, again, helping us see things from a different way. They're literally changing the way that we think about things and the way that we see things, and they influence, essentially, the way that we see the world. These are the creators that coin certain concepts. These are the founders that can get ahead of certain trends. And these are actually just like cultural commentators who are just commenting on what's happening and then give you perspective on that. So literally the highest leverage that you have today, especially with AI, with things just being replaceable, is going to be the way that you interpret things for your audience. So start developing some intellectual points of view. I want you to think of a couple of beliefs that you really stand by when it comes to your niche and start repeating them consistently. This doesn't have to be something super deep. This could be something like the 12-3-30 trend. This could be just the way that you approach journaling or creativity. The next thing is just start sharing observations, just like I'm doing on my channel. Right? Start sharing what you're seeing, what you're noticing, what you're picking up on, and what that could actually mean for your ideal audience. And if it's helpful, start creating language, coin terms, think of things that you can actually reference just that only your audience knows about, and they also understand kind of the underlying meaning behind all of those things. Because the internet is going to continue rewarding thinkers. They're going to continue rewarding people who offer their perspective, not just teachers who are going to be replaceable. And we're seeing this already with how the algorithm performs. We're seeing this with media that's becoming more interest-based. People want to follow people that they can actually see themselves in or have their kind of perspective in the way that they want to run their life.